Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. I apologize in advance for the poor video quality and the subpar audio quality. It is what it is. We got to get this information out there better, quicker than slicker. It's important that you stick with me for the duration of this video because I'm going to be sharing with you some things you're not going to hear anywhere else until it's long since mainstream. Okay, so let's just jump right into it here. Who's going to win the election in November? If the economy stays aloft, I think it's going to be Trump who wins. If they can keep it aloft right now, it appears to be crashing, but it could just be a correction. We'll see. If Trump wins, there's definitely going to be an escalation in tension. There's going to be more riots, obviously. That should go without saying. The winter might quell that a little bit. People tend to rage in the summertime and in the spring, not so much in the winter. And of course, school is going to be back in session, at least for some. Not in the physical sense necessarily, depending on where you live, I suppose. But, universities will be going back and they'll be open. So some people who might have partook in those activities before when school isn't in session, they may be back in school again. It's hard to say how committed they're going to be to that in light of everything that is going on right now. I think it's really hard for people to have a lot of confidence in the future at this point. But I guess we'll see how that plays out. But I do think that if Trump loses, and really it doesn't matter, no matter which way it goes, there's going to be unrest because it's going to be contested. There's going to be gerrymandering in certain states, I imagine. And it's very likely that because of the rift that is growing between the municipalities, the big cities, and the federal government, and just the states and the federal government, it's very likely that that is going to escalate and ramp up as well, which could potentially lead to more civil unrest. If Biden does win and it's closely contested, is it going to be a peaceful transition? Some people speculate that it won't be. You can bet that if Biden wins, gun sales are going to go through the roof. But on the other hand, as we've seen throughout this year, there's been a lot of people on the left who have definitely softened to the idea of the Second Amendment. So, it's really hard to say at this point. Now, like I said, the market appears to be in correction mode right now. It seems, though, every month or so since the big crash in March, the market has had a pullback and then it's reinflated, threefold. So it pulls back, then it reinflates threefold, pulls back, reinflates threefold. It's in part due to the just euphoria of the speculation of, things are going to get better and lots of new investors to the market. I've gone over these things countless times in many videos before. But indeed, the crash could be coming any day now. This could be the beginning of the crash. This could be the proverbial end of the dead cat bounce. We may be at the pinnacle of the bounce, and it may be time to come down and enter the real market recession. That could be where we're at. And of course, even in a recession, there's going to be small peaks, which make it seem like it's not a recession. But, I guess I think there's a duration, market has to be consistently down for 6 months or something like that. I don't know the exact dates, but there's a way they quantify what a recession is. I don't know exactly what that is offhand. Something to keep in mind also is that in August, typically, historically, that's the best month for the market, and September is historically the worst. So keep that in mind too, that we don't have history on our side when it comes to the market, and then you compound all the other factors on top of that. It's not really a good time to be invested, in my opinion. But if you're a long-term holder, then it doesn't really matter. Most likely, markets can remain stagnant, if not go into recession for a decade. So it is possible, that things go down. It is possible to go into a full-on depression at this point. It's a vicious cycle because what happens is the more economic problems these cities face, the more crime there's going to be. Okay. And then the more crime, that means there's going to be more interaction with the police. And the more interaction there are with the police, that's the greater chance for incidents. The possibility of an incident occurring, like a controversial incident occurring, goes up significantly. That, of course, leads to more protests. Those protests tie up resources because, of course, you have to put all your police out there on riot duty. and that can lead to more crime in other places. And of course, police have to interact with those protesters, which only fuels the protests if the protesters feel they've been treated illegitimately. And then, of course, you have the rioters, you have the looters. So it really is a vicious cycle. And the economy gets perpetually driven down because people are fleeing the cities now. So you have this growing rift between urban and rural. You have this, I don't know what you would call it, a rural sprawl now. It's not even a suburban sprawl, it's a rural sprawl. I think the suburban sprawl was kind of in reverse up until this whole COVID situation. People were going back to the cities. They were feeling more confident. But there also was, an inkling of people wanting to go into the tiny home, off-grid, minimalist, no material possessions type idea. People were starting to move towards that anyways, and this really was now a catalyst for that, and people are really starting to hightail it off the grid. And all of a sudden, everybody's a prepper, everybody's talking about shit hits the fan. So it's clear as day that people are abandoning the cities, and that's affecting, the housing market and all this stuff. So just so much stuff going on, right? Now, I've been also studying Joe Biden recently, and what I've observed with Joe Biden is that in the last couple weeks, I'm pretty sure they got him on some kind of medication. I'm almost 100% positive, to be exact. He appears to be on some kind of anxiolytic or anti-anxiety medication. You can just tell that he's a lot more calm and soft-spoken and not so, high-strung, high anxiety when he's talking. You can see that he's not like struggling to get his words to sync up with his thoughts. So I really do think that he's on some kind of medication, and I think they put him on that so that he doesn't totally, make a fool of himself at the election. He's speaking a lot more clearly in these last few appearances that he's made. There's still a few screw-ups, but not nearly as common as they were before. So it's going to be interesting to see how the ASMR version of Joe Biden plays out in the elections. Now, it looks like we may also have an election here in Canada. We had a new Conservative Party leader elected, and I believe that the Liberals are probably feeling a little threatened by that. So if they call for an election sooner than later, they stand to have a better chance of winning now than if they were to postpone it, for a year or two when they start to maybe lose favor. Okay, and maybe that's what they're worried about. They're worried about if Trump does win again, is that momentum gonna move up here? It's possible, right? So they may call an election while they're still in good standing with most of the major cities in Canada. I mean, if you can win the votes of Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, you pretty much got the election for the most part. On the topic of COVID-19, there was this new data which was released by the CDC that said that 94% of people who died of COVID-19 or who have died had underlying health conditions. And a lot of people are totally misinterpreting this. Lots of people are saying, oh, see, it's not a big deal because, unless you have an underlying health condition, it doesn't matter. But here's what you need to understand. 76% of people who are over the age of 55, that's the age bracket. Anybody over, if you're over 55, chances are you were one of the people who died of COVID-19, 90+%, okay? But 76% of people over the age of 55 have an underlying health condition. I think it's something like 45% have two. Now, what is an underlying health condition? Well, there's a variety of things. I mean, it could be anything. After you get over 55, you're probably going to have an underlying health condition, whether it's heart disease, hypertension, asthma, maybe you're a cancer survivor, maybe you have some really specific, unique disorder of some sorts, diabetes, I say that, obesity, there's so many underlying health conditions that a person can have at that point. So it does not change the severity of the illness at all, not one iota. But people are totally misinterpreting as, see, it's not a big problem because you have to have an underlying health condition. Well, guess what? Once you cross the 55-yard line, the chance of you having a, chronic health condition is going to be upwards of 75%. So, it's not just, you died of you got shot by a gun and you had COVID and therefore COVID killed you. It's not just like that. And what's more is that if you think about it, most people who die of the flu are going to succumb to the same statistic. So most people that die from the flu, it's going to be, some sort of underlying health condition. You only die from the flu if you have some underlying health condition, typically. So it's a moot point. So all I'm saying is don't get too overconfident by that misinterpretation of the data. And that's exactly what it is. So on top of all this, what you're going to have now is you're going to have the vaccine battles, because that's going to be another very, very contentious issue. Apparently the CDC is saying all the states should gear up for vaccination rollout in November. And I don't know where they're getting that from or how they even think that's going to be possible. But it seems like a lot of this stuff is really playing into the election right now. And I would say that if Trump is able to keep the economy, where it's supposed to be, or not where it's supposed to be, because where it was supposed to be, then it would be down in the gutter. But if he can keep the market, I should say, on the up and up, he's probably going to get reelected. But then that makes you wonder, well, everybody's always talking about this deep state stuff, right? Trump's above the deep state. So, if that would mean, like, if the market didn't crash, because there's lots of things that the Democrats could do to crash the market. There's plenty of things they could do. Okay, but they're not doing it yet. So it makes you wonder. Anyway, not just the Democrats, but the system as a whole. There's many things they could do to just crash the economy right now, but those things aren't happening. So it really makes you wonder what's kind of going on behind the scenes. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comments about what you think is coming down the pipe in the next couple months. And the next video I'm going to have a guest on the channel who's going to talk all about off-grid power. They're an expert in that area. Stick around for that. It's going to be a more practical video. I got some gear review videos coming out for you in the near, not so distant future. Some pretty nifty electronics that I know lots of you guys love. So we're going to try to keep some normalcy, but at the same time, we're going to still be putting out a lot of red videos, because there's a lot of important stuff going on right now that you need to know, and that is definitely very pertinent to emergency preparedness. So thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoy the video. Canadian Prepper out.